So hello everyone and welcome to this evening's Talking Heads conversation that we've been having over the last few weeks with people about life and Lent and lockdown. And this evening I'm in conversation with the extraordinary and the wonderful, don't laugh, the Reverend Karen Sutherland, who's over there in Northern Ireland in the wonderful city of Belfast. So hello to you, Karen, on this lovely evening. Because of course we're not recording this in the morning. You haven't got a halo at all on the side of your hair.
No, not at all. So lovely to see you. Always great to have a conversation with you and to chat to you. So thank you for this opportunity.
These conversations and conversations we have with people, they change our lives, don't they?
Yeah.
And the amount of times I've sat with you and we've talked and we've laughed and we've done a lot of laughing and maybe the odd drink thrown in there has shifted my whole view of what peacemaking and reconciliation actually means. And I remember when we were in Corrymeela in Northern Ireland and we stayed, Jess and I stayed, and you took us around your patch and you took us for a breakfast. Where was that? What was the road that we went down? We walked
That
down.
was the Shankill Road.
Shankill Road, and we saw the peace wall, and just being with you in that place, I learned more in here than I think I've ever learned from a book. So when we were talking about these talking heads, Julian said, "Oh, you've got to talk with Karen." I'm like, "Are you sure?" Because this
like a Graham Norton show. Photographs and all will appear.
But listen, I've got my questions. It's like Newsnight now. Going to get. So, my love, first of all, for people who don't know you, and I don't know who that'd be, because you're a bit of a ledge. Could you tell us something about yourself and what your ministry involves over there in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Karen Sutherland. I've been brought up in Belfast, and Belfast is my home. I live just about 8 miles outside it, but I'm based in Belfast. I've been in ministry now for 18 years, ready to retire, Cath, ready to move on. And really, at the beginning of those years, it was spent very much inside the church, ministering inside the church, being part of a leadership team, developing ministries, speaking, teaching, doing all the things with inside the church. And I went through a season where I felt that my faith was being rocked a little. People call it about your faith being deconstructed, in a sense, where you just feel you've lots of questions and your theology and reality isn't matching up. And for me, that began to really take place, which had a knock-on effect in the ministry life that I was involved in. Because what was happening, Kath, was my role ultimately was to connect church and the community. And even that in itself, I have terrible issues with, that we should have to connect with the community. We are the community. But whenever I was working out in the community, I encountered a lot of people who said they didn't fit in church, and they didn't fit for all sorts of reasons. And so there was a clear shift in my sense of call, and I ended up stepping out of the institutional church, and I do life and ministry outside the church walls.
And how many women Baptist ministers are there in Ireland?
There's 2,822. There are none. I grew up in the Baptist tradition. People ask me why I'm a Baptist. Certainly when I was younger, I don't know. I didn't understand denominations. I went along because it had the church at the time was at the end of the street in East Belfast, and it had a really cool, trendy youth group. But I found the church so boring. But my pals went there, and so I plugged into that. And certainly coming up through and that sense of call into my 20s, it just wasn't an option for me to be ordained within the Baptist Union of Great Britain. I got a job on a Baptist church and worked away there. but I wasn't ordained. And whenever I stepped out of the institution, then there was a group of people, a group of leaders in different denominations stood over me and ordained me as an interdenominational minister. So that sort of carried me through the early days. And then the Baptist Union of Great Britain recognized my work and made me a rev. And but I was already doing it, but that then makes me the first and only female Baptist minister in Ireland.
And what on earth is that like? Because I mean, I couldn't do this without you and my other sisters who happen to be wearing this. How is that for you?
I think to be honest with you, Kath, I mean, we're going to be sentimental now. We might need a wee cry here, but I mean,
Crack on, come on, we can do this.
it's people like you that really do keep me sane. You're one of my closest friends. I love you. I love having you in my life. It probably is a good thing we don't live close by each other. That mightn't be good, but there are lots of women already doing this, and there are women that I'm connected to, and we stay connected and we work together. But from a Baptist point of view, there are no Baptist female ministers, but there are other female ministers of other denominations. So they do exist and have existed long before I ever came along. But Baptist Union Great Britain have been exceptional. They stay connected to me. I have mentors there. They are constantly in touch with me. They hold me accountable. So I don't sense a sense of loneliness that I probably would have sensed years ago when I was in church, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. Because one of the things we know is we can't do this in isolation, can we?
No.
Jesus didn't do it in isolation. He had his mates. We can't do it on our own. We need, particularly with the kind of work that you're involved in and you're compelled to do, and the work that we need each other. It's not a good
Yeah.
idea, it's essential. So tell us a wee bit about Soul Space.
Yeah, so whenever we stepped out of institutional church, we thought, well, what are we going to do? And we had a heart for people who didn't fit. There were lots of folks that had been in touch, and certainly within the context of Northern Ireland, the Catholic and Protestant divide was something that we wanted to really face and tackle, because I believe in ecumenicalism. I believe we need to work together. I believe that our story is a small part of God's bigger story. And the more that we journeyed on, we did, first of all, register as an actual church. I still think what we do is church, though it may not be through the lens of what people understand church to be. But but connecting with people and giving people that space on their spiritual journey is important. And we encountered and still do a lot of people who, a bit like myself, a spiritual refugee, felt they didn't fit in church, but have a real deep faith. I mean, certainly in Northern Ireland, something like 80% of people would say they're spiritual, but the church is so often the obstacle. But so for us, I would say we're a bit of a traveling community, in the sense that we lots of people come in and then go on. Some go back into the Catholic tradition, some go back into the Protestant tradition, some people go into no traditions. But I think for us, the most important thing is to be a place that is based on values rather than theology. And it's based on acceptance and love and grace. And we've been challenged in those values, because whoever comes through your door, you know this.
Why?
Jesus has this habit of holding you to account and saying, right, so you're about acceptance. There you go.
No, but no, not really. Like, we really want to welcome. Oh, but not. Oh no.
Yes, yes. And then of course, the big holy mirror is shown back whenever you're like, God, I can't. I mean, don't ask me to love this or love it. And then it's like, well, I look at the state of you, Karen, and I love you. So for us, it was about creating a community where people can come together, but it's not, there's no conditions to belong, and people come and go. It's very erratic. Sometimes we'd have 2 people, sometimes we would have had 50. At the moment, they're all dispersed. But for us, we set up a thing called community chaplaincy, Kath, and it was really just to be out in the streets and to partner with people who are already doing their thing, rather than duplicating. So if there's a food bank, would be involved. If there's stuff to do with racism, we'll be involved. And it was never the intention. There's no strings attached. Well, you've got to come to our church and you've got to do this. It genuinely is figuring out what it means to be Jesus, and that's what we're still figuring out. So we marry people, bury people, but we're not a big massive church with programs. Does that make sense? There's nothing really to measure success in this. It is literally doing life with people, and I love it. I love it.
And who else did that? I'm just trying to, I don't know, it rings a bell. Anyway,
I don't know what his name is.
I don't know, there's a guy,
How do we do this?
I don't know. Anyway, years ago when I was, dutifully sitting in college and learning about this thing called mission, and the best description I was given by the wonderful John Hull, who was 83 at the time, Australian, and had lost his sight many years previously. Brilliant man. Was exactly what you've just said there, that the mission of God, so not the mission of the church, because there's a difference. The mission of God is to sniff out where the Holy Spirit is already kicking off and join in.
I love that. Yeah.
I thought, oh, right, okay, I can do that.
Yeah, I love that.
I can sniff.
And I think Jesus needs some radicals that, because I think you and I are very similar. We're like running to it. Whereas I think in previous years, we'd be very cautious and theology, where's the theology in this and where do we stand? And what about the church?
What do you
But
mean?
there's a beautiful freedom with pioneers.
I was just going to say, yes, in previous years that we would be, when would that be, Karen? Great love and respect, that's not the major element anyway. But that kind of, it's already here. Mm-hmm. The world is good, and all right, it's a bit botched and it's broken and there's a whole load of pain going on,
but it's inherently good.
And noticing and locating where that goodness already is, with people who would never darken the doors of the church but are closer to Jesus than an awful lot of people who are sitting there in the
yes. And can I just add to that, actually, because I was thinking about this yesterday. The greatest teachers in my life have been people who don't go to church. Listen, people say about, Karen's a minister and she's out and she's working in this and she's doing racism and she's doing peace and reconciliation. Listen, I'm out learning and unlearning. They are my teachers. I have fallen in love with people. And the minute you do that, you realize I have really nothing to give here except an invitation to journey together. And so yeah, the people that I work with are heroes, so
you joined in one of our morning prayers in the journey community, and every flipping morning I hear stuff that just rocks and so often from people who don't see themselves as religious in that way, but are deeply connected spiritually. I love that phrase you use about spiritual refugees. And God, there's so much more crack in there, isn't there, around those who don't fit? Turns out, I wonder, Jesus, there's a geography. There is a geography. He stood with the poor. That's just the way. It's not like, oh, I hate you if you got loads of money or you got, well, no, it's not that, but that's where he stood and stands. Absolutely. I also think because there's also more life there when you've not got much, and what you do have is upside down, and God knows for how many of our people that's the world right now. There is just an openness and a directness and an honesty. That's an oxygen. I can't be doing without that now. I can't be doing without that. So I've gone off my script now, and I'm just got to check the time. Okay, we're doing well.
That's good for us. I thought you were going to say it's been going on for 2 hours.
So this is a thing, because I'm aware of how hard this is, love. You're talking earlier for you about the crossing the divides between the Protestant Catholic communities, and there were you were the mayor's, the Catholic Sinn Féin mayor's chaplain. So you crossed a major road there to be alongside her. Oh my God. And that was costly. And that's just one thing that you've done that's costly. And I know there are many, many things. Why on earth do you do this, Karen? Why don't you just get a quiet life? But seriously, why do you do this?
Because, well, I know you. I mean, you met Deirdre. Deirdre is one of my close friends. I just love her, and it was an honor to work with her. She's now in government, head of the community. She's doing her thing and doing an amazing job. Kath, I don't know. I mean, it was John Lederach that said that unless your own community think you haven't betrayed them, then you're not really involved in the work of peace and reconciliation. And I think that if we create boundaries and say, well, look, I'm willing to do this, but I won't go there, then I don't know that we've fully grasped the gospel, and what it means to extend beyond boundaries. So whenever I got a phone call to ask to be Deirdre's chaplain, I didn't need to think about it. I was like, yes, absolutely. Um, and uh, and we became great friends through that. And again, just what I was saying earlier, my role was to support her, to be a source of strength for her, to turn up at things for her. But actually, she became my teacher. Her heart for community, the window into everything that is magnificent and the things that are tough in Belfast. She gave me a great window view into that. And I became great friends with folks in her team and in the city hall and beyond and in her community. And I treasure that. I don't know that I sit and I think. I just go straight ahead. I think Jesus has a history of just sort of using people that don't try to think too much through what they're doing. And I would probably be a bit like, I'd be like, yeah, no problem, I'll do that. But actually there's a part of me that I don't want to lose that, um because I want to be known as a woman who really is for people and who is willing to extend beyond the boundaries that we ourselves create. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, love. And speaking of boundaries and going beyond boundaries and going beyond what we ever thought we were capable of, you're at the United Nations this week, and you mentioned this flipping heck. So I'm going to say it. You've been invited by the United Nations to be a part of the conference this week to represent Northern Ireland. And one of the reasons is because you've just been doing this without thinking, but thinking for so long. And I'm just aware of the time. And because we're professionals, and obviously this is Newsnight.
Because we don't want people to think we're preaching at them and this is a hostage situation.
Will you get away with me? You're preaching. Will you back off with it? So no, God, no, not at all. So look, the final question, because I'm aware of the season as we're coming in now to Holy Week, a few weeks time, and the huge story. You mentioned God's story, the bigger story before. We're about to go into that story of life and death and resurrection. And we know that peacemaking and reconciliation is at the very heart of the cross where lives cross over. I'm just thinking for all our people who might be watching this, love, who are having a rotten time, might be in conflict with someone in their family or relationship or workplace or community. What's something that you can share that you've learned the hard way over these years around what it actually means? It's not in here what it means to you, and you can't be wrong. You know that. Crack on. What do you reckon?
I've learned so much. Most of the lessons that I've probably learned have been in the most heartbreaking of situations. I know people always go on about my laugh and my infectious laugh, but listen, I've had my stories of complete brokenness, and they're not stories that I feel I need to share. But I remember a couple of years ago coming across a Latin phrase that I think sort of sums up everything in terms of this journey that we're on, and it's solvitur ambulando, and it means it is solved as we walk. And the whole Holy Week and the whole journey and the life a ministry of Jesus is him walking through this life, through the pain and the hardship and the laughs and the joys. But he walked, knowing that it was going to result in his death. Um, And so I think there's something about those of us who are broken and busted, who are in the valley of death, who are facing horrendous stuff. And you and I know this, Cath, because one thing that we recognize is that we are entrusted with people's stories. But there is something powerful about Augustine's words, Solvitur ambulando, keep putting one foot in front of the other. You don't need to see where you're going. You don't need to have all the answers. But I think the work of peace and reconciliation and the work of healing and the work of togetherness means we've got to keep putting one foot in front of each other. And sometimes, we gotta drag each other along. You've dragged me a few times. Sometimes you just want to sit down and fall. Sometimes I fall into a ditch. Um, but there's something about getting back up and keep going and allowing God in that to change you and to transform your life. Are we having a moment?
Which you've just bloody ruined. Oh God, well look, thank you, Reverend Karen Thurman, for joining us this evening, because obviously
No,
it's
the
not
honour's mine to be here on this lovely dark night. In all seriousness, I just want to say before I close, and I know folks are listening to this, you guys are blessed to have this woman.
Oh, shut up right now. Well,
Oh, seriously, and thank you so much for this opportunity. She is a beautiful person inside and out, and I have the honour of calling her a friend. But you're doing phenomenal work, Cath, and I'm thankful for your voice in the church.
Well, my love, I cannot wait to see you again, to be in the same room, to share the odd glass of whatever it is that is to hand, to walk with you, to carry on walking with you. So go well, my friend. May God hold us both in the palm of God's hands, and to everyone who's watching this as well, may we walk on.
Bless you.
Bless you, darling. Bye.
Bye.